Sunday, October 4th, 1992. It's the final round of the 1992 British Touring Car Championship, and it's a title-deciding race between three drivers fighting for three different manufacturers. It had been an intense season up until this point, but little do the drivers, the teams, the fans who had bought a ticket for the race know that this race would produce something that would put the series on the worldwide map. But before we get into the race itself, let's go through some information as to how we got to this point. The 1992 BTCC season was to become the second season of the series being a single class championship, with 1991 being the first season to run this format after many years of the series using a class system like what the World Endurance Championship uses. Whilst the old class system didn't sound bad on paper, it was poorly executed. An example of how bad the class system was in the 1989 season, specifically at the title decider at Silverstone. Going into that race, the Vauxhall of John Cleland and the BMW of Jim Weaver both had a chance of winning the title. John Cleland, after fighting back through the field due to stalling on the grid, went on to win the race to win his first BTCC title. Jim Weaver, despite winning the race, ended up losing the title to Cleland by just 1 point. Now, do any of you watching this video notice something a bit off with what I just said? For those of you that did, don't worry, what I said was intentional. However, for those of you who didn't, I said that both Cleland and Weaver had won the race. In fact, when I show you an image of the final standings, what do you notice that's wrong? Yep, that's right, both Cleland and Weaver were both in different classes. Weaver was driving a Class B BMW M3, whilst Cleland was in the class below, driving a Vauxhall Astra. What makes it even more strange is that neither of them were in the top class, as the highest placed Class A runner, Andy Rouse, driving one of many 40 eras in that class, ended up finishing third in the championship, despite picking up the most overall wins, whilst Weaver and Cleland didn't take any overall wins. So you may be wondering, how on earth did Cleland win the overall title and not Rouse, and how on earth did Weaver finish ahead as well? Well, this brings me back to my point about the group system being poorly executed. You see, all four classes had the same point system, which you can see on your screen right now, and this is the same point system that had been used since the very first championship in 1958. So for example, if you won your class, you would receive 9 points, which will not only go towards the class championship that you were in, but it would also go towards the overall championship, which would be the championship that would officially class you as the BTCC champion. Because Cleland had won all the 11 races in his class, that counted towards his final points total, with every driver's worst 2 results not counting towards the final total, combined with him also getting the fastest lap point for all of his wins, he ended up with 110 points, whilst Weaver, who won all 11 of his races in his class, that counted towards his final points total, along with getting the fastest lap in all but one of those races, ended up with 109 points. Andy Rouse, due to fighting with Rob Gravitt for the Class A title, was less consistent than both Cleland and Weaver, which is why he ended up with only 78 points come season's end. As popularity for the BTCC increased in the UK, something needed to be changed in order to make the championship less confusing for the viewers watching at home or at the circuit itself. For 1990, the classes were reduced to 2, however in 1991, the series became a one-class series, using the same regulations that Class B used the previous season. So with that little bit of admin out of the way, let's talk about the 1992 season before getting into that infamous race. After winning the championship in 1991, driving a BMW, reigning BTCC champion Will Hoy moved to Toyota for 1992, partnering alongside team owner and 4-time BTCC champion Andy Rouse. John Cleland remained at Vauxhall alongside Jeff Allen, whilst Tim Harvey drove for Vic Lee Motorsport alongside Steve Soper, which was one of 2 BMW manufacturer teams. The other one, for anyone wondering, because they won't feature too much in this video, were ProDrive. Yes, the same ProDrive that oversaw the Subaru program in WRC. Going into the season, Cleland was seen as the early favourite to win the title due to Vauxhall looking very strong during pre-season testing, with Toyota considered to be Vauxhall's closest challengers, whilst the BMW teams looked to be on the back foot and would have to play catch-up during the season. In the first two races of the season, at Silverstone National and the Fast Thruxton circuit, Clement demonstrated the speed of the Vauxhall, winning the first two races of the season, with the Toyotas of Hoy and Rouse keeping within touching distance, whilst Tim Harvey was languishing down at the lower end of the top 10. The next two races, however, at Oulton Park and Snetterton, it would be the Toyotas that would win, with Hoy, after Clement suffered issues with cold tyres, handing the lead and eventual victory to teammate Rouse on two occasions, as a result of Will suffering from electrical issues, which he somehow was able to nurse to make it a Toyota 1-2. Hoy would then bounce back at Snetterton to take his first win for Toyota, with Clement a long way back in second, whilst Harvey, showing that BMW was making progress, retired thanks to a puncture. Then, at the Grand Prix layout of Brands Hatch, Hoy and Rouse infamously took each other out of the race, allowing Clement to take his third victory of the season, giving him the lead in the championship. The Grand Prix layout at Donington Park would play host to the first double-header of the season, with Hoy bouncing back from his collision with Rouse at the previous race to take his second victory of the season, with Clement passing Rouse on the last lap to prevent Toyota from getting another 1-2. However, in the second Donington race, neither a Vauxhall or a Toyota won that race. Instead, the improving BMW of Tim Harvey, after numerous tests at Zandvoort, which turned out to involve an infamous white powder, took his first victory of the season, despite his floor collapsing, with teammate Soper shoving Clement off at the last corner to claim third place. A foreshadowing of something to come, maybe? At the British Grand Prix support race at Silverstone, neither one of the three protagonists won that race, as instead Clement's teammate Jeff Allen would go on to take his only victory of the season, with Hoy second, Clement third and Harvey fourth. The meeting at Knockhill, which will be the second doubleheader of the season, saw the start of a major shift in terms of car performance, as it was clear that BMW now had the quickest car. As a result of this, Harvey would win both races at Knockhill, despite changeable conditions in race 2 and due to a red flag caused by a big accident from David Leslie. Home favourite Clement, meanwhile, was black flagged in race 1 due to loose bodywork, and then carved his way through the field in race 2 to finish third. For Hoy, however, it was a disaster, as after finishing 5th in race 1, he would then retire in race 2 due to clutch issues. It's worth pointing out that in this race, future BTCC champion Matt Neal, driving an independent BMW, would get spun round by the ProDrive BMW of Colin McRae. Yes, the same Colin McRae who would win the World Rally Championship 3 years later. The double win at Knockhill was just the start for Harvey, as he would win the next 4 races at Pembrey, the doubleheader at Brands Hatch Indy, and the penultimate race of the season at the second visit to Donington GP. Going into the finale, Clement led the championship by 3 points ahead of Harvey, with Hoy a further point back in third. Only 4 points separated the 3 championship contenders, and no one knew who would come out on top by the end of it. The finale would take place at the Grand Prix layout of Silverstone, as it had done in 1991. With the 3 drivers in the title fight driving for 3 different teams and 3 different manufacturers, Clement, Harvey and Hoy's teammates would essentially play supporting roles to try and help their teammates win the title. Going into qualifying, many people believed that Harvey would once again grab pole position as a result of him being on form going into Silverstone. So it came as a surprise when Harvey found himself down in 12th position on the grid, behind both Hoy and Clement, who themselves had not had a great qualifying either. Their teammates, on the other hand, had much better qualifying sessions and started further up the grid, with Rouse being on pole. But either way, the stage was set for an amazing crescendo, and either one of those 3 drivers could walk away with the title. At the start, Rouse kept hold of the lead, with Soper losing a place to David Leslie, but would remain in 4th as a result of Julian Bailey having a bad start from 3rd. Heading down the hangar straight, Soper sets his sights on Leslie in front. Coming out of Stowe, Soper goes for a move on Leslie at Vale. It initially looks like he has the move done, however David, not wanting to give up the position that easily, stays on the inside of Soper at Club and ends up turning Soper around, leading Soper to be clattered at the rear by Rob Gravitt. Despite having rear end damage, Soper is able to keep going, but now has to charge his way through the field from the back. This in turn allows Clement to take advantage of this and move up to 5th, but just behind him, Tim Harvey battles with Julian Bailey and ends up tacking the back of Bailey's car car, somehow avoiding a penalty and moving up to 6th, 1 place behind Cleland. After disposing of Bailey, Harvey sets his sights on Cleland and the pair battle it out for 5th position, swapping places in the process. Eventually though, after many laps of battling, Harvey passes Cleland at Copse to move up to 5th. But for Cleland, this was not an issue, as if he could just finish behind Harvey on the road, provided that Harvey wasn't in the top 2, he would win his 2nd title. Harvey needed a car in between himself and Cleland, and to pass Hoy in front if he was to win his 1st title. Elsewhere though, his teammate Soper was on a charge, as after many laps of carving his way through the field, he was already back up to 7th, 1 place behind Cleland, and could put himself in a position to help his teammate win the title. Harvey and Cleland caught up to Hoy, but so did Soper, who had been eating into Cleland's lead. It is at this point that the top 7 are within close proximity of each other. However, this doesn't last for long, as Harvey, clearly seeing a Buffy at the front of the pack, goes for a move on Hoy at Copse, shoving each other wide in the process and allowing both Cleland and Soper to get past the pair of them, essentially ending Hoy's chances of retaining the title from 1991. This allowed the top 3 of Rouse, Allam and Leslie to break away and allowed Cleland and Soper to fight it out for 4th, with Soper hoping to pass Cleland in order to back him up towards Harvey. Going down towards Vale, Soper goes for a similar move on Cleland like he did on Leslie on lap 1 to take 4th place from the Scotsman, which in turn allows Harvey to be right behind the pair of them heading down towards Abbey. It's at this point that the late Murray Walker dishes out this famous line of commentary whilst Cleland sticks his middle finger up.
So Cleland has stayed ahead, but Soper is ahead of the Vauxhall. So John Cleland is sandwiched between the 2 BMWs. I'm going for first, says John Cleland.
Ah, we miss you, Murray. Harvey can see an opportunity to repass Cleland and immediately sticks right behind him around Abbey to line up a move down Bridge Corner to take 5th place, with Soper immediately letting him through, allowing Harvey into a championship winning position. But Cleland was not ready to throw in the towel just yet and immediately sets his sights on repassing Soper. Going into Brooklands, Cleland went down the inside of Soper but ended up on the huge curve, sending his car briefly up on 2 wheels. This in turn pushes Soper off the track, and clearly not taking the shove very well, Soper retaliates.
He attacks again as they go to the right-hander in Lovefield, and they both spin. They're both out. Soper and Cleland both out of the race.
Unbelievable. In a matter of moments, Cleland went from being in a championship winning position to be out at the hands of Steve Soper. Whatever your view is of this incident, it ended Cleland's chance of winning his 2nd title. Andy Rouse would come through to take what would be his final victory in the BTCC, whilst Tim Harvey crossed the line in 4th to become the 1992 British Touring Car Champion. His amazing charge in the second half of the season, combined with all the drama that happened in this race, gifted him his one and only BTCC title. Whilst Tim Harvey celebrated his title victory on the podium with the top 3 finishers, Cleland was left to vent on what many people believe was a championship that he was robbed of.
It takes me straight into barriers. I mean, what are we doing here? Is this stock car racing or is this motorsport? He might get away with that in Germany where he might be Mr. Superstar. But this is clean. The man's an animal.
In response to this, Soper denied that he deliberately took out Cleland to try and help his teammate win the title. Whilst he takes responsibility for the incident, he still maintains to this day that he didn't take him out on purpose. The incident led to a tribunal with the RAC, the then governing body for the BTCC, which lasted for months as they were looking to ban one of them from the championship. Eventually, Steve and John came to a truce and agreed to say that the accident was a racing incident to the RAC in order to ensure that both of them wouldn't get banned and also to ensure that it didn't bring the sport into disrepute given the media attention that it got from it. On the topic of that, the whole race itself was such a success that it ended up getting a lot of media publicity, not just from the UK, but also around the world as well, with Cleland and Soper being the biggest talking point out of it, essentially making Harvey's title win an afterthought. The event definitely put the BTCC on the map as a real spectator sport, and it definitely contributed to record-breaking crowds at every circuit they went to. Record-breaking crowds that are still around today, even during the initial years where the series went downhill after the conclusion of the popular Super Touring era. The BTCC is still in a healthy situation today, and I would like to think that if it wasn't for this race, the BTCC would not be as popular as it is right now. But going back to what Steve Soper said when he said that he didn't take Cleland out on purpose and still maintains that viewpoint to this day, I don't know. Do you guys believe him? 'Cause I'm not sure, to be honest.